Okay, that's us. Hi, my name is Amrita, and this is Amrita by the Book, which is my booktube channel. And with me today is Lana ExLibris. Hi, Lana.
Hi, Amrita.
Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about you and your channel?
Yes, my name is Lana. I also have a booktube channel called Lana ExLibris. I read from a variety of genres, but I especially like historical and mystery. Those don't sound right, but historical fiction, a lot of mysteries and romance. And I do all kinds of stuff. I do vlogs and challenges and tags. I don't really do reviews because I feel like talking about books is hard. But I'm sharing my experience with reading books.
Okay. So you're like one of the very first people that became a friend on BookTube, and like it's been so wonderful just to have you around. And like for those of you who don't know Lana, she leaves the best comments on your videos. Like she always has just the right thing to say, and it's always like a great counterpoint, or else it's like a better exploration of whatever it is that you're discussing on your channel. And I just love her videos and stuff. And she's also a musician. Like she didn't mention that, but she's also a musician, and she's crazy talented. And you should check out her channel. So anyway, so this Love Fest is basically about another kind of love fest. So today we'll be talking about MLM romances, which when when I put the link for this up on Instagram, one of our other friends, Amy, who's Potato Brarian, check out her channel.
Hey, Amy.
And Amy sent in, like a message, and she was like, for a second, I was like, why are you talking about pyramid schemes? But we're not talking about pyramid schemes. Lana, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about romances that feature two men in love.
Yes.
So it's men loves men romances.
Yes. Right. You just recently found out that it meant pyramid schemes as well, right?
Yes, because I don't know why, but I was doing research for this video, and I thought I should just Google MLM, right, and see what comes up. What if there are some controversial articles or something, and it was all like marketing. I was like, that's not what I that's not what we're talking about.
No. Okay, so let's just start with the basics. Like, how did you get started reading romances? Because I feel like everyone has their own particular path into the genre, right? As a whole.
Just as a whole of romances.
Yeah.
I started with fan fiction. I grew up very much with the strict ideas of what literature is and what is considered literature.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely based on, classics. And those books are valued more than anything else. And I never really grew up around romance novels, seeing them, seeing how much variety there is, different subgenres or anything. I only grew up around classics and some literary fiction, though I'm pretty sure I didn't read that. And when I was a fan of Harry Potter growing up, I sort of became part of different fandoms of different pairings, and I found fan fiction, and that was probably the first time I ever read about romance in literary form. And it took me a very long time to actually get to a published romance book that wasn't fan fiction of something else. And for a very long time, I did not consider, to me, fan fiction didn't count. I can read any kind of fan fiction I want, any kind, and it will not count towards, what books I read in life and what I enjoy, because there definitely is a stigma that I grew up with around that. And so I felt like, oh, if my fan fiction is based on something that is okay that I'm reading, it's fine. And it can get as wild and dirty and whatever, and no one will know because it doesn't matter. And it took me quite a while to get to romances. But I think the first published romance that I read was actually MLM romance.
Wow.
Yeah,
Which one was that?
Captive Friends.
So for those of you who don't know, like Lana's been trying to get me to read this book for like as long as I've known her. She's been like, and have you read The Captive Prince?
You
And
really need to read
it makes so much sense to me now that like that's the book that you keep recommending, because I feel like when you first read something from a particular genre and you've never read it before, and then you just fall in love with it, that's the book that you'll always cherish, you know, like that.
Yeah.
You have like a special relationship with that. um for me, I think like it's just really interesting to me that you started out with fanfic. Like I because usually it's the other way around, right? Like you start
I
out with
know
like
it's the usual. So that's interesting.
so for me, like I grew up pretty much the same as you. Like there was always a premium placed on the classics, you know, like you, there's like a sense of like what is good literature and what is trash literature. And you definitely had a stigma around trash. But I think where I lucked out, and I mentioned this in one of my recent videos, is that I had an aunt. I still have her, and knock on wood, and I love her, and she's like my second mom. And for some reason, when I was like 13, and um, she always tried to be like, you know, like a complimentary mother to me, you know, like she wasn't trying to usurp my mother's role, but she was always like there as a second mom. So whatever like she thought that my mom wasn't giving me, she'd just sort of nip in and give it to me, like if it was candy or if it was experiences. So she took me to the library one day, and she was just like, here, why didn't you try? And there was this giant stack, you know, it was just like floor to ceiling romances, like Mills and Boon romances is what we had. It's the same as Harlequin in the United States, but in the UK, it's Mills and Boon, and that's what we have in India as well. And she said, you know, like you should try some of these because now you're a teen, and you might like
It's
romances.
time.
And I got like a bunch, and I'd always seen, you know, like the big girls, like the older teens in the library, walk out with like stacks of these books, right? I don't know if you went to the library as a kid, or like if there was like a romance section in your library, but this was something that I grew up watching. Like, you know, the older girls would come in and they would literally check out like 10 books at a time, you know, and because they were all like really thin, they're like 250 pages, 150 pages, something like that. So they would just like walk out with these stacks of books, and I was like, "Ooh, I get to be one of those girls," you know. And this was the 90s, and the thing about the 90s is that we were just coming out of the 80s, and the 80s in particular were just really bad for romance. Like um it I think like romance just got like more and more like they were trying to be like more edgy and edgy, and instead of going like edgy in a good direction, what we ended up in the 80s was a lot of like what today would be called dubcon or non-con, like dubious consent and non-consent, which is basically rape.
Mm. Mm.
And the 80s was just like rape central. Like everything was just like rape, 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 rape. And the 90s was like a reaction to that. So people were kind of like moving away from it, but there was still, you know, a lot of the authors who came of age writing in the 80s were still writing in the 90s. And you kind of saw that leaching over into the 90s. So it was a bit traumatic for me, to be honest. But I later on, like, so I'm a big fantasy and science fiction nerd, right? So I started reading a lot of fanfic and slash fic about Star Trek when I was like a late teen, and that is actually where, you know, I began to see how like romance could be something more than just, you know, like girl meets boy, and then, you know, there's like
Stuff
all kinds
happens.
of like, yeah. But Star Trek slash fic is also like, you know, it's queer, and it's you know, there's like relationships between aliens and human beings, and like, you know, all kinds of contexts came up. And it really helped me understand that the world was a bigger place than I had imagined it to be. And I think like slash fic is probably oh sure, let's just talk about that. So did you read a lot of slash fic when you were also reading fanfic?
When I was reading Harry Potter fan fiction, which was pretty much all fan fiction I was reading, no, I knew that it existed, but a lot of it was between, like, I know there's a lot of like Harry Draco, but what I was seeing a lot was like Harry and Snape and stuff, which I was just like, no. But even like Harry Draco, I never really. I will talk about this later on, but at that point, no. I think the first MLM fan fiction that I read was around when I was like 18, I'd say, because before that, well, I will go into that later.
Okay, sorry, I'm sweating because it's like super hot, and I don't want to turn the AC on because it makes noise. So I'm just like a little bit like glowing right now. Sorry.
I did want to say that I completely lied before, and I just realized that's what I said was not true. The first thing I don't know if, are we counting Jane Austen as romance?
We can make. I have really strong and complicated feelings about that, but sure, for the purposes of this video, we can say yes, Jane is romance.
So yeah, Jane Austen, I read that, and I completely forgot about this. I was a big Nicholas Sparks fan. I read so many books by Nicholas Sparks, and I love them so much. Yeah, so that was those were the dark days.
I am ending this live and kicking you out right this moment.
I was a point when I was just like, it feels like it's the same story again and again, so I probably don't need to read any other book by him, and then I stopped.
Okay, so fine. So like, let me know, like, how did you move from reading like Harry Potter fanfic into reading like how do you think like you've changed over the years? Like, what does that evolution look like?
What does that evolution look like? I have to say that reading fan fiction growing up, fan fiction really teaches you a lot of stuff. About all kinds of weird preferences that people have and all the things that exist. And that was like a big part of my sex ed, was probably just reading fan fiction and being like, I don't think that's right, and just Googling stuff and being like, oh, it's a thing. Okay. Nicholas Sparks just came from, liking The Notebook and wanting some of that, but I was not satisfied with Nicholas Sparks because it was about older people than I was. And it wasn't interesting. It was more like literary fiction to me than a romance. I wasn't really like rooting for them to be together. It was more like, oh, we cry and then we come together and then we cry again. The more I was reading fan fiction, I think when I reached For Captive Prince, I remember I was like 23, 24. And at that point, I was just like, you've been reading these kinds of stories your whole life. Maybe you should actually read what people publish, because I'm sure that what you like is also published. And then I discovered, published romances and both MLM romances and hetero romances and all kinds of different other romances. And I think I'm just enjoying, I'm still at the point of experimenting and seeing what I like. I tried historical fiction for the first time last year. And it's just, I feel like there's so much more to explore for me. I was definitely very sheltered in my own life, in my own head, about what I need, what I can read, what I should not read. And even when I started reading historical romances, there was a part of me was just like, do I add this to Goodreads where people can see what I read? What if it's like people I know in real life? Like, there's still that in me So I'm still working on like massaging those edges and seeing how far can I go, basically.
Yeah, the Goodreads thing especially is like so true, right? Like I think all of us go through that process of like us being like, what will people think if they really know the things that I read? You
Yeah, that's why
know?
fan fiction was such a fun place for me, because I don't have to tell anyone what I'm reading.
Right,
No
right,
one needs to know. No one's going to see that cover
right.
published anywhere, especially becoming a booktuber and having more people see what I read, and me talking about it, and maybe posting stuff on Bookstagram that I know that some people from my real life follow me. They probably don't even know. Like, how do I talk about this? So yeah, I'm still there. What about you? I know you have a long history.
Yes. So I'm not very good at taking direction at the best of times. So just knowing that a lot of people have problems with the things that I read just made me want to read more and more varied things, like I'm just very contrary that way. So I ended up reading like a wide range of things, but I honestly feel like, just dialing it back to like, gay romances and, LGBTQ relationships. Um, it really wasn't a thing when I began reading romances. Like I remember, I think the first book that I read that had a MLM romance in it was actually, there's this author called Suzanne Brockman who writes like you would think like very like stereotypically cishet kind of romances, because her books are about the military and about the FBI and stuff, so it's very like, you would think it's like very propaganda, but in one of her romances, like she has this thing about it's called Troubleshooters Inc. and it's this long series with like a cast of 1.5 million people.
I remember you
And
talking about this on one of your videos.
right. So what
Yeah.
she does is like in each book, she has like an A track where you have like one couple and the book is really about them. But in the background, you have like a B track and a C track, and you can see like, like there's like other stories that are happening. And then down the road, she'll like bring those people to the front and then they will get a book. And in one of her books, she introduced us to like these two characters. One was an FBI agent in who he was out of the closet, but like not like very vocally so, and very like um, he fit in with that like very like heteronormative kind of way. And then you had this Hollywood star who was a total mess because he couldn't come out of the closet, and he was drinking, he was on drugs, he was like Hollywood royalty, etc. And I really, really got invested in the story of these two characters. And what I didn't know at the time, like when I first started reading these books, is that Suzanne Brockman has a son who is gay, and she was writing these stories because she wanted to write, she wanted like her son's experience to be shown in a book. And she was like, well, why, she wanted to be a supportive mom. And publishing basically told her that's not going to happen. Nobody wants to read about like deviants. So this is not going to happen at all. And so she was really just sort of pushing this agenda, and she was like trying and trying and trying. And I think it took her like 10 years or so to get to the point where she could write a story that was solely about Robin and Jules, which is the name of those two characters. And she lost a number of readers because of it too. Like people would write into her and tell her like, I don't want to read about like gay men. Like, what is this about? Like I signed up for something very different. And she was just like, well, if you don't like it, don't read it, just like, psst. So I think that was like
when was
sorry.
that around? What kind of time are we talking about?
So
2000
I think, yeah. So early 2000s is when she began writing the Troubleshooters. And I think maybe the first book might have even come out in like late 90s, like 99 or 2000 or something. So it's a while ago at this point. Um, but I remember reading her because at the end of her books, she would like write these notes and she would write, the context of her work. And she was very out and proud about the fact that she was a member of like PFLAG is I think what it's called. It's the support organization for parents of LGBTQ youth. And she was a card carrying member. She would like fundraise for them, and she was an activist. And she was just like, like, this is my life, and that's what I'm writing about. And if you don't like it, too bad for you. So, and this is like long before, we forget just how brand new gay rights are in so many parts of the world. Like even in the United States. I'm constantly shocked by the number of people who seem to take it for granted, because I'm just like, this was in my lifetime, and I'm not that old. Like I'm old, but I'm not that old, like I remember all these cultural wars and like the legislations that needed to be passed and everything. But yeah, so I think that was like Robin and Jules were like the first two MLM characters that I really fell in love with outside of like slash fiction, and whose story that I was like really invested in. But I don't know that because I know a lot of people who solely read or prefer to read MLM over cishet romances. And you and I have had a couple of conversations about it, about why we feel that is. Like, why are MLM romances, like MLM romances in particular, so popular with women? Do we want to discuss that right now, or do we just want to go through like a couple of questions? Because somebody did ask, like, what is the difference between an LGBTQ romance and like an MLM romance? Like, do we want to discuss that first?
I mean, sure. Wait, where are my questions?
So everyone who doesn't know, like Lana is like one of the most like prepared people that I know. So Lana has like she has like research. I showed up and I'm just winging it. So that's why there's a difference in quality between like her responses and mine. Like she actually knows what she's talking about.
I'm just terrified. That's why like I need to know in advance what's happening. Yeah, so on my Bookstagram, which is Lana ExLibris as well, is Librariel Vanya asked what is considered as LGBTQ plus and MLM and what isn't, because many people said that Call Me By Your Name wasn't LGBTQ plus, even though it's an MLM romance. Does every MLM count as LGBTQ plus? That was her question.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think it does. Duh. I mean, I don't really see where that conversation came from, because I've not read Call Me By Your Name, just FYI. I do know that one of the men is not like openly gay, and maybe he's bi, or I know that there's something, he's not like fully gay, but I feel like anything on the spectrum is LGBTQ plus. That's why there's the plus, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't it count?
I think there might be, I'm not sure if this is what they meant, but I think there might be differentiation between LGBTQ literature and MLM. I think like MLM romance is definitely a subset of the former, but I think when people are talking about LGBTQ romance, they're really talking about like own voices.
I think that's a separate thing, because I mean, Own Voices has been a movement that's pretty recent still. And before that, there were a lot of people writing about LGBTQ plus people. And I don't know, I feel like it's just weird. I mean, if it's, for example, a story about two straight men who are, I don't know, challenged to, I don't know, sleep together is that then just an MLM romance? But it's not an MLM romance because it's not man loves man. There's no love, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, I don't know. It's a tricky question because I don't really see how it cannot be LGBTQ plus. It's representing a different expression of sexuality and romanticism from heterosexuality.
So I was actually like, when you sent me that question, I was also a little bit like, I never thought of that before. Like, it's not something that and I wish she'd like, if she's watching this, like if she eventually ends up watching this, then I hope she'd, elaborate further, because I'd love to hear what the argument is, because I feel like we don't know exactly what it is that they're saying. Maybe it's like valid. I don't know. But I don't know if this is a tangent, but I was like reading something that a male gay writer was saying about MLM romance, and he said, and I'll link it down below in the comments, but he said that a lot of the gay love stories that he had read prior to women starting to write MLM romances and MLM romances emerging as a category, weren't really romances. Like, they were gay love stories, but generally it was about the trauma of being gay, which, fair play. I mean, for decades and centuries, being gay was a traumatic experience. It could get you murdered, it could get you sent to prison, but he was really looking for a romance. He was looking for something happy, and he couldn't find that in a lot of own voices LGBTQ romance, so to speak, because it invariably ended up being a tragedy, or being separated the way that you were, the leads were in Call Me By Your Name. They don't get to have a happy ending, and his idea of a romance is like really like happy ending. Like, he wants the two people to have like a trauma-free happy ending. Like, even if there is trauma, then it will still end up in a good place for the leads. And he kind of found that with MLM romance. And I think like that's how he differentiated it. Like, there's like MLM romance, and then there's like LGBTQ lit, and he doesn't see.
That's an interesting distinction, but I think what he was talking about sounds like, I mean, as we said, this is still like a very recent thing. And until very recently, there weren't a lot of happy ending, fun gay romances out there. And I don't think it's because the genre was that. I think because people were not in a place to have a happy story. I don't know. I feel like it's less to do with the genre, more with the timeline. Like when we're reading that, when they published, because I feel like now those are blurring together. But again, like I feel like when I hear, oh, this is an LGBTQ plus book, the first instinct that I have, it's not that it just features a character who is on a representative of it, but that it deals with, the topic of being an LGBTQ plus person in the world. There is some kind of discussion around that. But I mean, more and more, I don't see that in books. More and more, I just see, people falling in love and that never being discussed. And it's not I don't think it's a different genre. I think it's just people are taking these terms and doing whatever they want now, which, it's their right to do. I don't know.
So I tend to see that as a positive thing. Like, I tend to see the fact that the emphasis, at least in MLM romance, has shifted more to like giving gay people a romantic life that is beyond trauma. Like they're not defined by their trauma. And, you know, they're being treated as people, or as like how cis het people would be treated in a book of this kind. And I see that as a positive thing. How about you?
Yeah, I really like, I mean, I definitely, as a Gemini, I'm always the devil's advocate, but I definitely see both sides of, like, I love reading books that are set in, if we're talking like fantasy, or like Captive Prince, it's set in the world where sexuality is like not a problem, like no one cares. People just love who they love. And those are very important stories, important worlds to showcase that here is a reality. So if you're struggling envisioning that in your real life, you can see that, oh, here is like a world where you can be immersed, where people don't care and it's really equal and everyone loves who they love. But on the other hand, I do see the importance of own voices stories about not necessarily like the trauma, but what it's like. I read last year a book that I really loved by a South African author about, you know, boys falling in love, but there's also a coming out story, and it was pretty heartbreaking reading the book, the experiences that the characters had. And you can argue and say that, oh, there's so many now of these like coming out stories in books, that do we need another one? But it's a South African author. He's coming from a different culture, a different country. It's a different experience for every single person. It's just like, I think a mix of both is important. Like, it's good to have options, but those conversations are not going anywhere. And just because in America there are places where you can have this kind of like life where most people don't care, everyone's supportive, but in a very large part of the world, it's still very much not like this, and a traumatic experience. And if you want to, well, not that if you want to be, but if you, I feel like when you read those stories, the compassion that you feel for these characters, the humanity that you're experiencing is very important in your support for the cause growing, if that makes sense. I don't know.
How do you feel about women writing like things like coming out stories and stuff for men? Like straight women writing like coming out stories for men?
I'm not really comfortable with that. I'm so aware right now that I am a white straight woman. And I'm just like, I don't know what to say. I'm not comfortable because I don't know how, like, I don't know how truthful, I don't know. I'm just like, I know that I should probably not read that. Because it's everything that I read, the books that I read that are like literary fiction. Like, I just read a book for the Irish Readathon, Heart's Invisible Furies, and it talks about the life of a homosexual man in Ireland from like, he was born like in the 40s, and it goes to like 2015. And reading about his experience, the like constant feeling and being a gay person in a world where you cannot be a gay person, where it's not okay, it's not legal. There's so many repercussions, like psychologically, of having that secret, having that identity that you personally maybe even just hate or don't accept about yourself. There are just so many psychological like ways that it comes out, that I feel like you can do your best to write a scene, and maybe that scene will be fine, and maybe someone has this experience as well that you've written about, but there's so many of these little things that you don't even know because you have not gone through this. So yeah, I would say that I'm not comfortable with that.
I agree. Like that is like the one that's like the one criticism that I've seen directed at women writing MLM that I always think like, yeah, that's my hard line. You know, that's a boundary that I do stick to. Um, but yeah, but like you said, you know, like once that's over, like if it's just like, you know, two people who are meeting and they're falling in love and there's like banter and they're doing like being cute and doing cute things and having a happy ending. Yeah, sure. I'm into that.
Yeah.
Um, okay, let's get into what really made me think of this topic and why I wanted you to be here because it was a comment that you made on Instagram and I read it and it really blew my mind. And I was like, yes, like this is exactly like, you know, the thing. Um, so you, I forget what the context was, but you basically talked about like why you like MLM romances. And I don't know if you remember what you said, but you said that you prefer to read MLM romances because you don't have to worry about the power dynamics of the couple when you are reading those books. Which I was like, yeah, oh my God, yeah. But yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think I first understood it myself when I was reading, what's that book? Something about the Duke. What is that book about the Duke?
There
Oh,
are
I don't
so
remember.
many, Lana.
The
They're
one
all
that's
books about
really
a duke.
bad.
Oh, a Duke of Her Own? Is that what it is?
The first one in that series.
Yeah.
Don't remember it.
The Evie Dunmore one. That's what you mean.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Because I just kept, I don't even know if I can use the word triggered here, but there were so many moments that I was just not comfortable and not okay. And even when I was not directly triggered by what was happening on the page, I was always like in the state of like, is it gonna happen? Is it gonna do what's going? Like I could not relax into the
Mm-hmm.
story, into them. I mean, I hated the hero as well, but it would just, after reading so much MLM, going into this book, I was just so hyper aware of all of these additional feelings that I'm not used to feeling when I'm reading romance, that were really getting in the way. So here's part of my essay, I guess. So I honestly don't even know how to start talking about this. I've not read so many cis hetero romance books to tell you that I've been triggered so many times and it's like not the life for me and I've decided to not read them anymore. It's just that as I said, like I'm always on the lookout for something that will trigger me. I'm very not comfortable with the male gaze.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that it's written sometimes. And I guess I'm always expecting the males in those books, especially, I mean, I read a bunch of romance books that are traditionally published they might have some like sex scene, but they're pretty much like a rom-com. And then there are books that are like much more heavy on like the smut, right? And those books scare me so much. They scare me so much. Wait, what else did I say here? Yes. Okay. Oh, here it is. Yes. Something that I heard from an interview with a mathematician who's a woman. She was talking about her experience studying mathematics around a lot of men when she was the minority. As a woman, she said that when a man makes a mistake, when he doesn't get the solution right or whatever they do in mathematics, who knows, then this guy is stupid. He's labeled as an idiot, like he's not good at math, goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
If a woman makes a mistake, then all women are bad at math. And that is so true about so many things. When, like the way people talk about women driving, you know, like, oh, if this one woman doesn't drive well, then all women are terrible. And because we're usually the minority in so many situations, everything that we do is as if we're representing our gender And like, I know with my friends, when I'm talking about experiences, when I'm talking about sexism and things that bother me, and about how other men conduct themselves, some of my male acquaintances say, well, I know a girl who's like, she loves doing that, so it doesn't make sense. And I'm just like, we are different people. Like, it doesn't work like that. And that's kind of what I feel like when I'm reading hetero romances. I don't know how to explain it any other way. It's like I'm reading it and knowing that people read it and think this is true. Oh my God, how do I explain this? What did I say here? This is why I'm writing this.
I actually do understand what you're saying. Yeah, there's like a sense that there's a universality to the experiences being described in a romance. Like, this is how love is supposed to be, and this is how male-female relationships, hetero relationships, are supposed to be. And it can be incredibly harmful in that it, like I started reading romances, and a lot of them were explicit romances long before I had any kind of sexual experience. And I definitely went into adulthood thinking like, this is how sex is supposed to be like, and this is what attraction is supposed to be like. This is how you conduct a romance. And it took a lot of years of unlearning those things, just to understand that there's a difference between the kind of relationships and dynamics being depicted in these books versus what it's like in the real world, in the modern world, especially with like historical romances, like you said. There's like a very strong, because there's always like an alpha hero, and then there's like the virginal, sometimes headstrong, but always like very sweet natured heroine. And it really took me a while to be like, I can be a bitch and it's fine. Like, I don't need to be like, oh, all right, like, you are the Lord and Master. No, it's fine. Like, it does promote a certain kind of male-female relationships. You're right.
Yeah. And I wrote this, I'm so worried about female representation because I'm always worried that this portrayal someone will take as a staple. Even in porn, I find most heterosexual porn deeply unsettling. And every time I worry about the people who made this movie, why is there a need that they're supplying or satisfying for such a power disbalance in those movies? And I worry about the young and older men who view porn as like a sex ed, and who will have this dynamic, this view of females and the dynamics between female-male relationships established in their brain. So every time they have like real life experiences, those dynamics are brought out, and that's how they treat people. And the same for women. I feel like so many women are uneducated or undereducated about their own anatomy and their own, I don't know, understanding of relationships and what is okay, what is abused, what can you say, what can you not say. And I mean, even in that book, that stupid Duke book, I don't remember the name of, I remember when we were discussing the book in our body read, I was like, I wish this book had footnotes with information. It's like, by the way, pulling out is not an effective contraceptive method, because I know like grown women who don't know that. They don't know that. And they read this and they think it's normal. That is not okay. And so like, I feel like my brain is just so political when I'm reading hetero romances, like explicit hetero romances. It's just like, is this a good experience for our heroine? Could he be more thoughtful? Like, even especially like in that book, she likes the way he is with her, and in my head is like, oh, if it were me, he better look out. This would not fly with me, and I would be traumatized, and I would consider myself abused. And so and when I talk to other women about even feminism,
Mm-hmm.
those who are not super on board with feminism, they always are talking about how, well, men should be the protectors. They should like do these crazy things and surprise us with like unexpected kisses and blah, blah, blah. And I'm constantly just being like, but not like, no, like this can be your preference and that's fine if it's your preference, but that's not the way humans should interact, because to some people this
Mm-hmm.
can be traumatic. And so like I just
Mm-hmm.
feel like I cannot relax when I read those romances. I was even so last month I read a female romance, historical fiction romance, for a buddy read with Sunny Luca. Ladies' Guide to Celestial Mechanics. And I was very curious to see if I would feel the same as I do with MLM, where those power dynamics are gone. And I cannot and I can relax from thinking about feminism for 5 minutes when I'm reading a romance. And I couldn't. It was even in a way worse, because this time around, like, it's not necessarily the men who are, maybe not aware of their privilege, male privilege, when they're interacting with females, but it's two females who have their own, like, how do I say this, like oppression, self-inflicted oppression, that grew up with being oppressed as women. So it's like two people with issues about power dynamics. And it was even more stressful for me. So yeah, so that's
it's not even like LGBTQ romances that you like. It's very specifically MLM romances that
I think so. Yeah, when I was thinking of these things, yeah, because they're equal. And even if we're talking about some kind of power dynamics in a male romance, even when it's, I don't know, I don't really read dark romance, but I'm sure there are many out there with like dom sub relationships and stuff, when one person is like being consensually treated as less. Even then, to me, when I think of that, I think, oh, it's two people doing whatever they want to do. Like, it's their business. When I think of females in that situation, I constantly worry that, oh, it's strengthening the like image of women being oppressed and being the like sub to the master. So I just get really political in my head. And I don't like that.
So we've had like a couple of people who are joining the chat. I guess
sorry,
people are waking up.
to join on my rant. I'm like so sweating now.
So Dan actually brings up a question that it comes into something that I wanted to bring up, like hearing you talk, which is the idea of the female gaze and whether there's like a female gaze in MLM. Because like when I was thinking about this topic about power dynamics, what I went back to was actually what you said, like that, but also a lot of the gay male pushback that I have seen towards MLM romances written by women comes from the fact that they feel that it is reinforcing the sort of beauty standards, the unreasonable beauty standards in the gay community, like there's because I know, like, my gay friends, I have like several gay friends who have spoken to me about how difficult they find to date or to put themselves out there because they don't adhere to the stereotypical, like, what's good looking in the gay community, like they don't reach a physical standard of beauty or perfection, they don't work out and their body doesn't look a certain way, and they feel like they can't date the men that they want to date. And I actually, like, later on when we will be talking about like our favorite MLM romances and stuff, which we should soon because we've been talking for like 50 minutes. But I will come back to that in a bit. But I do think about that fact, like about how, because you spoke about this too earlier, about like how a lot of the women who found their way to MLM romances found it through gay porn. And gay porn, like, I don't even care for porn, but I remember the first time I watched it, and I was just like, because in like hetero porn, the men are not the point, and they just look like bleh. And then you watch gay porn, and you're just like, what is all this beauty? You're just like, wow, like men have been saving all the best bits for themselves. And you kind of like, it's a very superficial reaction to like things that go on to then affect men in the real world in like very real ways. So yeah, I was like wondering, like, have you noticed like there's like a female gaze issue when it comes to MLM romances?
Interesting.
I might have just ruined it for you. Like, now you're going to be like reading and be like, what is this?
You just gave me a new question. I'm not ready. I think it's just interesting to me how many years of humanity have we had unfair representation of women and beauty standards and whatnot imposed by other men, by other women, by porn and advertisement and whatnot. And MLM romances have been like around not that long. And we as women are already talking about how should we help gay men feel good about themselves physically. When like no one is talking about that about women ever. I think when you're talking about female gaze, what I'm thinking, so I grew up in Eastern Europe, right? And we have something like part of why I'm constantly triggered by everything. Very strong ideas about manly men, like the men should be men. And that definitely comes from our history and how much has happened in my country and the trauma and the wars and everything. So we had to rely on men, and we, after the war, had very, very few men. So it's actually, there's like things that people say that a man should be a little prettier than a gorilla. But women have like very high beauty standards, and it's pretty common to see like a very beautiful woman, completely made up, beautiful clothes, on high heels, walking with like a below average man, below average meaning like he's wearing old sweats and like not looking good or put together, because we have this sort of like standard of, well, men can do whatever, but we have to be the prettiest because we have to compete to get the very few men that are left. And even though nowadays it's no longer true, that kind of mentality stays. And so growing up with this very strict ideas of like men should be this way only, I really like that. To me is traumatizing because as someone, I am heterosexual, I do love men, I love the male form, and I'm so tired of it being like put in a case of this is the only way it can be. And when I think about the female gaze when it comes to male romances, I can see women portraying men in more like, how do I say this? Not even like feminine ways, but describing things or putting them in situations that don't necessarily go with the like image of men, if that makes sense. Like part of this is so weird, but even I don't know if it's porn or not, or like erotic images of men that are made for like gay men, they are usually even where they're not like fully nude, they are in positions that are usually thought of as female, even though there's absolutely nothing female. It's just, you know, they're stretching, or there's like a little more leg, like it's something more elegant, and not just like that burly, like, expression. And I think the female gaze would like that more. So we're writing men more diversely, because I know that a lot of men have that internalized ideas of masculinity, which can be toxic. I mean, it depends on where you grew up, of course.
No, I actually, that's actually a really interesting point. Just because, like, I see so many men periodically bring up people like Timothy Chalamet or Tom Holland and be like, why are these people like famous? Like, why is the internet, you know, why are they the internet's boyfriend? And it's always the women who come there and say, like, you know, because they're hot or we find them attractive. And men really, like straight men, not gay men, but like straight men have a really tough time understanding that women find more than one kind of masculinity attractive.
Yeah.
You know, like, and it doesn't matter. I don't think it really matters where they're from. I think I've seen that comment from like Indians, from Americans, from British people. Like, it's just a variety of straight men being like, why is this attractive?
Hello. What is happening?
I don't know, but
okay, I can hear you. Okay, I can hear you again. Good.
Okay. I don't know what's happening, but nothing good happened right now. But I do feel like there is a okay, that completely threw me off. I can't. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I feel like there is a because everything is so new, and because there is such a crossover between different communities and between different demographics. I'm really interested to see what the next like 5 years of romance and especially like YA and teen romance are going to bring, because I can see like there's a lot of like MLM romance in the adult market that is being that is very successful, right? But I especially see a lot of stuff in the teens and YA market that is just exploding with not just MLM stuff, but like LGBTQ stuff in general.
Yeah.
And what you were saying about like women just bringing like men into the fold and like already having all these discussions based on our historical experience of dealing with, you know, different kinds of hostilities and discrimination. I think that's really interesting because I think there are like alliances being forged right now that we don't recognize as such and we don't really understand as such, and it's going to be messy, but it's also going to be interesting, you know. So I don't know, like in like 5 years we can like come back together and be like, Lana, what happened?
Yeah, and like when you're talking about YA, also again, I'm going back to the book that I just read, Heart's Invisible Furies. He as he like grows up as a gay man in Ireland, he meets all these other people, and it's fun how he talks about different gay men that he meets in different times throughout the years. And there's like a moment when it's all like older men in their 50s who are just coming out of the closet, maybe have like 3 families behind them. And I feel like the trend of the YA gay people has to do with the fact that in America, at least, already in high school, it's becoming acceptable to come out and to be gay, and there's more conversation. So there are more stories of people being gay in high school, because before that, you didn't really have that unless it was like a tragic story and you were in the closet or you were outed, and it's like it's a completely different story, obviously. And I think this is a very good thing and it should continue. I do have to say that recently I was looking into starting reading some contemporary Russian literature because I know nothing and I read nothing. But there is a woman, like I think she's like 18 or 20, who writes gay romances in Russia, and it's like very famous, and it's like YA gay romances, and I kind of want to read and see what that looks like because I've never read that. So I'll report back.
Okay. I feel like we should probably move into a few questions because we can talk about this for a while. Hello, what happened to Lana?
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, all right. I thought that I thought your screen had
I'm
stopped.
just looking at my notes here. Oh, can I just tell you a quick tiny story?
Yeah,
because we didn't stop on that. So I don't know why I want to tell this, but I think it's fun. So I didn't know gay people existed until I was around 18 years old.
I hope that's not your story. I hope there's like more to the story.
And the first time that I've ever heard like term homosexual, I was like 11, and I remember asking my mom what that meant, and she said it's men who hate women. And that's all I got. That's all I knew. And I remember being around the same age, 11, in school, and people were talking about homosexuality for whatever reason. And I said something. I was like, I need to insert myself into this conversation. And I said, I think it's really good because like you don't have to deal with the drama of romance ever in your life. And that's pretty cool. And I remember everyone was looking at me for a very long time in complete silence, just like, what? And I remember being like, what did I just say? Is that not right? Oh my God, that feeling of confusion and like, what is happening? And I think one of the reasons why I enjoy male romances because I feel cheated by the world. Because when I found out about gay people, I started researching all over and realizing that, oh my God, it's been here forever. It's humans. It's probably every fifth person around me, and I had no idea. And I just felt like I was blind my whole life, and I felt like I need to be vindicated and I need to learn as much as I can about all kinds of people in this world because I was really sheltered growing up. That's my story.
That's adorable. I don't think I grew up like, in India up until a couple of years ago, actually. It was punishable. It's like a British era law you'll find in like pretty much every former colony of the British. It's called Article 366, I think. And it basically said that, if you are found guilty of sodomy, that's what they call it, then you basically go to jail. So it wasn't until like a few years ago that people could, even if your social circle was okay with you being out, you wouldn't feel safe because the law could come for you. And they did use that law to harass a lot of people as well. So in India, we definitely weren't talking about it. Like it was a very like American thing for me. Like when I moved to the United States, so I moved when I was like 19. So I don't think I met a single gay person until I moved to the United States because they probably didn't feel safe coming out, so yeah. But I've had like really involved conversations with myself about like what it means to be an ally, especially in the Indian context, because I feel like a lot of people of my class and my generation in India, we throw around the word ally a lot, but we mean it in a very American sense, like to our American friends and stuff. But what does it mean here in India is a much more complex and difficult conversation that I don't think a lot of people are having even today.
Same thing. Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, let's do a few questions because our friends couldn't be here today, but they did send us a few questions and they were really good. And we already did one with Manya. Um, okay, I'm gonna take like Nat from Nerdy Nat Reads and Milena from Milena Reads. I'm gonna do both of them together, like one by one.
Can you
What are
start
you?
then?
What?
I want to hear your answer first.
Okay. So, favorite MLMs, worst MLMs, and favorite tropes in MLM romances, as well as your favorite duo. The last one is from Milena. Um, okay, so for me, you know me, I'm a mood reader.
Same.
So it's really difficult for me to be like, oh, this is my one favorite thing, just because it's, like this week, that's my favorite thing. Next week is probably going to be something entirely different. So I'm going to tell you like what I like right now, because when something is my favorite, it really is like a really good thing. It just might not be the most favorite thing next month. Who knows? So my favorite MLM right now is the boyfriend material. Or just boyfriend material. I don't know why I keep calling it the boyfriend material. It's not the boyfriend material. It's just boyfriend material.
So good.
And and it's Alexis Hall, who has written like a couple of novels and is actually, so it's a man writing. He identifies as male and as gay, so it's not a woman writing it. Although I know that you and I are big fans of KJ Charles as well, and she is definitely female. Yeah. That's Boyfriend Material. It's a really good book. Everyone should read it. It's PG Wodehouse meets Bridget Jones's Diary. That's how I describe it, and it's just incredibly funny. Yeah, it's the banter, right? Like there's there's like this is so much banter between the two leads, and also like between like everybody basically.
Yeah. And like there's so many good tropes. There's the trope, fake dating trope, which I feel like everyone loves fake dating trope. And kind of enemies to lovers. I mean, they're not super on board with each other in the beginning. And which is what I loved. I love when in books they have actual like relationship discussion, not just like we're in love, we have a conflict, and now we can be together. It's like we need to communicate and we need to have these difficult conversations, and we're not the super ideal pairing. Like we don't just click. We need to communicate and talk. And I love when those things are part of books, especially, I don't know, this is not a YA book. This is like
no, it's an adult book.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when we're talking especially about like YA, when younger people read, I feel like it's so important to give them the language and give them an example of here is how you have a conversation about something that's hard and difficult. Sorry.
It's something that I didn't have, and I wish I'd had it. It definitely made my life more difficult. Worst MLMs, I read a lot of trash. So I'm very unlike Lana in that way. Like I read a ton of
what
trash.
Do you consider trash exactly?
Just like, like it's you know it when you read it. You will pick it up and you'll read it and you'll be like, yep, that's trash.
Is it kind of book when you read and you're like, this could be a fan fiction written by a 13-year-old girl? Is that what you mean? Okay.
Yeah,
I've read those.
Yeah. There's actually a bunch on Kindle Unlimited. So there's like there's people who they're basically writing erotica, right? With like a little bit of plot to sort of stitch it through. I don't remember any of their titles because, again, like when something is trash, it's just, garbage in, garbage out. So I just like read it and then I'm just like out. So I don't remember like any of the names of the things particularly, but I know I've read it and it's basically erotica. And like Dan was talking about like the female gaze and stuff. Oh, I don't even know what gaze this is. This is just bad. Do not recommend. But I mean,
you keep reading them. Why do you keep reading them then? I always wonder.
I don't know, like sometimes I'm just in the mood for it, you know. Sometimes I just need a palate cleanser. And these books are like really short and they're really fast. I know romance readers who read like 30 books a month because it's so easy for them to just cycle through them.
Yeah.
So, and you don't especially need to like think too deeply about them. Like you don't need to engage with them at
Yeah.
a level that, you know, you might have to with like something like boyfriend material. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't generally um, categorize my reading as like trash or like as good. I just sort of flip through and I just read it. But when I read trash, I know I'm reading trash. And yeah. Favorite tropes in MLM romances. I don't know if I have like an MLM specific favorite trope. I like fake relationships. I like fake dating. You know, like I like the way that it throws the characters into situations that are ridiculous but also fraught. But you know, and if they have like a lot of tension between them, like sexual tension or romantic tension, it's great. It works in historical, it works in contemporary, it works in every setting, and I enjoy it a great deal. As for my favorite duo, I really like um, KJ Charles's Slippery Creatures, which is a lot of people don't like it because they're like, it's a story of two psychos. And I'm like, yes, but they are adorable psychos. And
I
I
disagree.
really
They're
like them.
lovely.
Yeah.
They're low standards.
So, yep, there you go. Lana and I, we just read the same books. That's what it is. Uh, Lana, what are your answers to these questions?
So favorite wait, where is it? Oh, here it is. Favorite, I think I'm going to go with Band of Sinister, so by
Yeah.
KJ
Mhm.
Charles.
Yeah.
And it's not one, you know, there are some that like you are so into like the relationship and you ship them so hard that like forever that is like your OTP, your one true pairing. I have those with other books, but I
Mhm.
always come back to this one because, and again, I'm just going to throw out there, I'm a Gemini. I am a curious person. I love learning things. I never remember anything I learn, but I love consuming information and getting to bottom of things. And Band of Sinister is about, it's a Regency era, uh,
Mhm.
about a man and his sister who live alone. They're poor, and it's really important for them to like keep up their reputation. For the sister to get married, for him to get a job. I don't remember. I think something like that. And then they have these like fancy neighbors who are called the murder. They're called murder. It's like a group of friends, and they're supposed to have like a terrible reputation. I think one of them like impregnated a girl, or another one ran away from his engagement, like something that was like super terrible in the Regency era, and so they cannot, they don't engage with them. But then one day, the sister breaks her leg close to their house, and so they have to be in the house with the murder, with all of these guys, and interact with them and live there for a while. And the cool thing, and this is again where my like curiosity and Geminiety, it's not a word, comes in. All of these men who are part of the murder are different kinds of like artists or scientists. There's like a geologist, there's a doctor, there's like a painter, there's a musician, and all of them are like a group of friends because they want, like, they're truth seekers of the world, but they're shunned by society.
Mhm.
The geologist, because back then learning about the secrets of the universe, of the earth, was against religion. So you were basically a criminal and someone who was not accepting that, God created the world. If you were a doctor, you were going into science. Again, science was not really something that was super okay with the church as well. So it's like all of these people who are shunned by society for being like truth seekers and looking for the truth in everything, and a sort of putting away the societal understanding of morality and what is good and what is bad and what is okay, what is not okay. And I love that so much. And our main character, he is a classicist. He is very well versed in Greeks and Roman literature. So like he has read about homosexuality because the Greeks were very explicit about that. But then again, he lives in a society where like it's not okay, it's immoral, it's bad, you're a bad person, you'll go to hell and whatever. And our main character talks to the main guy from the murder. And they have a lot of like long walks when they talk about morality and what is it and why do we think this way? Why is there a reputation? Why, like, it's just so much interesting conversation about topics that I love. And again, why like I am so into, not so into reading it, but why I enjoy reading MLM romances and about LGBTQ plus issues is because I still live in a world where it's basically like no one talks about it ever. And it's like, we're just going to ignore that people exist and that things happen and people are having experiences because we're not comfortable with it. We don't know what it means. And like my need for like information to know, to understand is very strong. And this book delivers on that front. My worst MLM that I read was called Junkie. And it's about two guys who are into like racing cars somewhere. I know nothing about cars, but they're racing cars. And they're like friends to lovers. And one of them, I think, identifies as straight in the beginning. Or he doesn't, but his friend doesn't know. I don't remember. But like they're very macho boys. And then they sort of get together. And what I hated about that is because the way that the author portrayed the macho guy was by making him misogynistic and sexist. Like, just because he's not actually interested in sexually assaulting women doesn't mean that he can say things that are misogynistic. Like, it's still not okay. Like, there's so many comments. They go to a diner and a girl orders like a burger and he's like, oh my God, finally, all the girls just eat salads. And she's like, cool, because she eats a burger. Like stuff like that. That's just like, why? Like there are other ways to make him seem like a bad guy, like a macho guy, without bringing down women.
Is this written by a woman or a man? Do you remember?
I'm Googling. Junkie. It's a name that gives me nothing. 1 second. Let me see. Author profile. Yep, it's a woman.
Wow.
Amrita Hebert. This is the book. A lot of people love it, but I just could not get past the conversation, like the way he was acting. Because like, if this is what you're doing, you're just trying to show a characterization. There are better ways to do it. And favorite tropes. When I was thinking of like tropes specific to MLM romances, I know there are tropes. There's one name that I just like gay for you trope. Do you know that one?
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I'm
so
not.
You're straight, but you
fall in love with a gay person. Yeah. I don't like that. Because of what it assumes. No, that's not the word. Well, you understand what I mean. But I do like stories where the main character finds out that he's not straight. Because again, I think it's a very interesting seeing that, like understanding what is happening, like what? And then finding like a life that is true to them. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Like them realizing that, oh, I have been constricting myself, not even knowing, and then being liberated. Yeah.
Did you watch Schitt's Creek, the TV show?
Yeah.
So like I think like that's one of the things I loved about Patrick. Like, like he thought that he was this one person, and then he meets Dan and he's just like, well, maybe not. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be like this traumatic experience. I mean, it's a big deal, obviously. But I like when the book that I read with this was Christmas Deal. And it has a fake relationship and fake gay relationship, and doing it, the guy's like, oh, this feels right. What's happening? And it's just it's very cute, that book. Wait, I'm gonna show you the cover.
I don't know if any people can hear the motorcycle in the background, but it's a running joke with my friends that there's this guy that lives on my street. I don't know where he's going, but he has this motorcycle and he races it down the street and it's a dead end. Where is he going? I don't understand. And he all like right now, like he usually does it in the evenings, and that's when I like record my podcast and stuff. And right now, it's like, there's no reason. He never does this, but I swear to God, it's like he knows that I'm recording something and he's like, oh, Amrita needs silence. I must get on my motorcycle and just like run down that street to nowhere. Like literally, there is no place for him to go. Idiot.
I always thought that you were just living on a very busy street.
It's the quietest street in town. There's like literally nothing happening. It's like super residential. And then there's this one man on a motorcycle and he just like races that motorcycle up and down my street. Anyway.
He just needs book recommendations. So that's the only way he can get them, just going by your place. This is, by the way, the cover. It is written by a woman. And now I'm thinking,
no,
am I cool with a woman writing about a man?
All your worst
sexuality. It's just all the questions.
All your worst romances are written by women.
But actually, to the question that you had earlier about like why women read and write, these actually, I'm not gonna bore you. I found a lot of articles that were very interesting. But from what I could tell, that it's like a common knowledge that men are very visual, but women like words. So like porn doesn't do it for women. They need to read something. They need the plot. Also, there is a book that I found that's called Girls Who Like Boys Who Like Boys. And it's so interesting. And it's written by a lecturer in the University of Leicester, oh my God, in the United Kingdom. And he investigates what women enjoy about consuming gay male erotica and how it fits in with their perceptions of gender and sexuality. And while conducting research about female viewers of gay porn, one concern that this author had was whether gay men would be concerned about the fetishization of gay male sex. But after interviewing more than 200 gay men, she reported that most saw no issue with this phenomenon. I mean, it's just 200 men, it's not a lot. But
yeah, I mean, that just answered another question that we got from Amy at Potato Brarian. Like, she was like asking about like whether it's fetishization for women to write MLM romances. And I guess that is a book that answers that question. Yeah. So what's your favorite duo? Like, we'll wrap up with that. What's your favorite duo?
I left this question unanswered because I knew that I wanted to like come with something on the spot because I have options. I think, as you said, the first book that you read is gonna be the most important. I think Captive Prince will stay with me forever and ever. Laurent and Damianos.
I am absolutely going to read it. I'm going to read it and then I'll report back. Yeah. It's the one thing that I know for sure that I'm going to read this year because Lana won't leave me alone until I do. So,
if you want me, I can read it with you. I mean, we can do like a buddy read. I will happily read it.
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, so I think that's us. We've been speaking for like like a minute. Oh, Dan, I think Dan's read it too because he says that, I assume it's a he, and he says that he's very interested in Amrita's opinion. So, oh.
What
All right,
is
Dan.
your favorite duo? You never answered that.
Oh, I told you from Slippery Creatures, Kim
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, yeah,
And Will.
yes, and Will.
Forgot.
Okay. Thank you for joining me on this, Lana. I knew that this was going to be fun because it's always fun talking to you. And this wasn't too painful for you, was it? I know that you were like nervous about it.
I was so nervous about it because it's part of what we talked about, the stigma of romance books.
Yeah.
And this is like an extra stigma, I guess, of being a woman who reads what is this? Gay books. Yeah, because most people, well, normal people who don't read would think this is very weird, but
yeah.
But being on BookTube and talking to people like you and seeing just how many people do this has definitely normalized it for me, and I can come out of my own little closet being an MLM lover.
I don't think I follow anybody on BookTube that hasn't recommended at least one MLM romance at some point, whether it's like YA fantasy romance or like adult romance or like something, but it'll, at least like one book that they've read or recommended has had like MLM in it, which I think is like, it's such a big change and it's happened so recently. And it's so great to see that happen. And I know there must be like another part of BookTube that I don't follow that is very different, but I don't follow them for a reason, and I'm gonna leave it that way.
Whenever people say like, "Oh, I need to like put more effort into picking up books with LGBTQ plus characters," and it's like, "Oh, and for this one, I will probably choose this book, and this will be like the book," and I'm like, "You have to like." Find books. These are all the books that I read. Like, if I could only read these books, I would.
Yeah.
But that's me.
Is there like a book that you would recommend for a newbie? Because for me, it would be boyfriend material. I feel like it doesn't matter if you're not into MLM romances as such. Like it's just a great book, and it would just appeal to a very wide range of people.
I agree because, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
A lot of people do pair it together with red,
white, and royal blue.
I always forget which one is first. Red, white, and royal blue, but that one is more political, and that is more explicit. And I feel like this is very funny. It's not explicit. It's like fade to black romance. So if you're starting out, maybe start out easy. And it's so funny, and it's so human too. I love that. It's not just about gay people, it's about a relationship. It's about two characters. It's not about them being gay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I feel like we could talk for like another 1.5 hours because there's like so many things to discuss, and maybe we'll come back, at a later date.
If you have more questions, leave them here so we will have something to work with next time.
Yeah.
I'll write more notes. I love that I printed them out.
I think it's the printing out that like really, catches my fancy. I'm just like, not only do you like it, it's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you to Dan and to Katie for like showing up. I know it's like an awkward time, but it really worked for Lana and myself, and we wanted to try something new. And thank you to all the people who sent in all the questions and expressed interest. That was really nice of you as well. And we will do this again, and I hope you'll join us. And maybe we'll do it at a time when more people can join too. Who knows? We'll see. Yes. But thanks, Lana. And hi, Jeremy too. Hi, Jeremy. And
I would love to read Lana's notes and watch her TED Talk. I mean, some petition will make it happen.
Yeah. So have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Lana.